Welcome to Interfaith Views and Issues, a program designed towards understanding among different faiths and cultures. I am your host, Shafayat Mohammed, and with me in the studio today is Rabbi Jaffer Kurtz-Lendner. And Rabbi, welcome to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you with us in the studio today.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
And I'm sure our viewers all over the world would be very, very happy to know we have a rabbi, because, you know, all these negative concepts outside there in the world have a lot of Muslims in the East and the Middle East, and even in the Caribbean at some point, all over the world, with this concept that, you know, rabbis and Muslims don't have this good working relationship, except those people who read and study and understand. They will know that you know, we all come from the same background and got a good working relationship, etc. Anyhow, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And
thank you.
Really, really do thank you very much for coming to the studio and being with us on Al-Hikmat.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So tell us, how long now have you been at Temple Solel?
I've been there 5 years. My family and I moved down from Louisiana 5 years ago. Before that, I was in Louisiana. My wife is from there, and we spent 12 years in the New Orleans area. First started working with the Jewish Student Organization at Tulane University, and then eventually moved into a position with the congregation in a suburb of New Orleans, and I spent a total of 12 years there before we moved here.
Wow, that's interesting. So in your experience as a rabbi, have you been involved? I know. Sorry, I should say. Could you share some of your interfaith experience with our audience?
Absolutely. Good relations between Muslims and Jews has always been important to me. Way back in my college years, went to Brandeis University, where at the time there's a very, very small Muslim community. However, I was part of a group of people who really wanted to get Muslims and Jews communicating with each other and being fair to each other. When we talked about, you know, there it was much more political rather than faith-based, but even within the political movements, I was always involved in the ones that wanted to seek dialogue, intercultural dialogue, to help us understand each other, and rather than conflict with each other. Once I became a rabbi, I sought those opportunities to participate in Muslim Jewish programs. So when I was a rabbi at Tulane University, my very first year, I met a professor of math at Tulane who was also an advisor to the Muslim community. Became very good friends with him. He was from Algeria. We used to have you know, meet for coffee 2, 3, 4 times a year, have conversations. When I became the rabbi in the congregation where I was in the suburb, happened to go to one of those walk-in clinics because my daughter was sick. So I walked into the clinic, and the doctor happened to be Muslim. I think
and where was he from, actually?
I think he was also Algerian.
Okay.
No, or maybe Pakistan. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
But we were talking, and he, you know, as we're talking, he goes, "Oh, so you're a rabbi out here?" We're chatting, and so he ended up helping me put together a Muslim Jewish program in that area, the first ever in that suburb, the first ever
what
Muslim
year was
Jewish.
that? Do you remember?
That was the first time the first time we actually pulled it off was in 2006. And I remember it specifically because it had been planned for months, and it occurred the Sunday after the war broke out in southern Lebanon. The war, the month-long war between Israel and Hezbollah. So it was interesting that we happened to meet right after that war broke out, when again, the world was being focused on fighting between Muslims and Jews, and here we were together, and we didn't discuss politics, and we said that our role is not to discuss politics. Our role is to bring Muslims and Jews together, and even in the midst of this hostility happening thousands of miles away, we're still here to say that there's a place for Muslims and Jews to be together and speak with each other, and just one of the interesting things that we spoke about with this doctor and I spoke, and our political views were not really that different. In terms of the political leaders in the Middle East, he and I tended to like the same people and tended to dislike the same people, whether they were Israeli or Palestinian or Pakistani or whatever. We tended to be on the same. But you know, and sometimes.
Well, I suppose people who are educated, and people who are, you know, experienced out there in the world and deal with a lot of people from different faiths and different cultures, educated professionals don't necessarily, it doesn't mean that they all, but most of them don't really get into this kind of negative approach in life.
I would agree. You know, I was there to see him to help so that he could help my daughter get well. And he did a great job.
Wow.
And we used to love going to see him. You know, we would go. We had our regular pediatricians, but we would go to him fairly regularly too to see him at the time. And I still had family in Louisiana who see him. But one conversation really struck me when we were talking about political differences. One point I said, you know, we can talk about these political differences, but I don't have any influence over my local politicians down the street. I certainly have no influence over politicians thousands of miles away. You know, I have very little influence over the city government or the county government, let alone politicians who I didn't even vote for because they're in another country. So I said that the political issues have to be dealt by the politicians. As people, we can't solve those issues. We have to come together as people and share the human aspects and share our, you know, what we all want. Because what does every human being really want? They want to know, they want a family, they want to experience love with their family, they want to have a job, they want to be able to take care of their family and provide enough food, they want job security, they want their health, they want to live in freedom. They don't want someone else telling them how they should live their lives. They want to be able to go to their own religious leaders for guidance, and they want to be able to experience spirituality however they find it. And that's what most people want. And I think that's, you know, whether you're Muslim or Jewish or Christian or Protestant or Catholic or Hindu or Buddhist, or doesn't matter what religion. That's people, that's what we all want. And when we can recognize that fundamentally what we all want is the same things, I think then we can share those experiences with each other.
Do you know, it's very strange. If you were to tell some people in some Muslim countries that a rabbi took his daughter and had a Muslim physician take care of her, they would like, wow, you mean, how could that happen?
Right.
You know? And you know, even here in America, a lot of Muslims, when they have to do legal matters, the first thing they look for is a Jewish lawyer.
Right.
And a lot of Jewish people go to Muslim doctors.
Right. I've been to several. That wasn't the first time I had a Muslim doctor. I had a Muslim doctor before I had children up in New Jersey, and he referred me to a Muslim specialist, and not because they were Muslim, because they were good. You know, I was having a medical issue that really needed someone who was board certified and really qualified in what he was doing, and this was the best. This was the name out there that said, for this condition, you want to go to him. He was the best, you know, and it was you know, a wonderful experience. You know, before we started the interview, you asked me to talk about experiences I've had with Muslims, whether they're good or bad. I've never had a personally bad experience with a Muslim ever in my entire life. I've never had a bad experience with a Muslim. Never had it. You know, I've every time because it's never been about, it's been one of two things. Either my contacts with Muslims have been about something that had nothing to do with religion, like going to the doctor or having my pool cleaned, or I was specifically there for Muslim-Jewish relations, in which case we were
yeah.
coming together. So, you know what? I've never had a bad experience with a Muslim. I can't imagine. You know, I can't imagine why I would.
So, your activities at the temple where you are
Yes.
there, what basically is the function of a rabbi, just for the benefit of
Sure.
our listening audience?
You know, especially, you know, I think clergy, as we call
Okay,
them
you
in
more or less a
America.
sort of Orthodox rabbi.
No, I'm Reform.
Reform.
I'm
good,
Reform.
Good.
Reform.
Good.
You know, I don't know how clergy functions throughout the entire world. I know every country has its own cultural norms about what clergy do. A rabbi in America is very similar to other clergy in America.
Okay.
As you and I were discussing before, we were talking about our daily lives. I think
Yes.
we can identify with each other's daily lives more than most of the people that we serve can understand. You know, I'm writing sermons for Friday night
Yes.
services because I conduct our Sabbath services and the spiritual, our spiritual worship services. I prepare for our life cycle events, weddings, prepare for funerals, prepare for when a baby is born, for the baby welcoming ceremony.
And what do you call that ceremony?
Well, when it's a boy, it's called a Brit Milah, which means the covenant of circumcision. That's how we view is our connection to the Abrahamic covenant through circumcision.
When the baby is born,
A boy is done as 8 days. I think in the Muslim tradition, I think it's at 13, correct?
7 days. We do the celebration 7 days after.
So you do the celebration in 7 days.
Yeah.
Was
boy
there-
or girl.
Yeah. Okay.
It's called akika.
Okay. All right. So
And it's considered like a thanksgiving to God that
Sure.
you had a child, etc., etc.
do you do circumcision in the Muslim?
Very interesting question,
Yes.
because you know what? In some countries, like I remember in some places, people used to think that Muslims alone had to do circumcision,
Okay.
not knowing that Jews also do
Absolutely.
circumcision. And I think the circumcision is what? It is mandatory for the male in your...
Mandatory. Yes.
Right, interesting.
Right. It's part of Jewish. We consider it a commandment.
Yeah.
So those are the for a girl, we just bring the girl and her parents up onto our pulpit altar. We call it the bima, and you know, say a blessing for the parents and welcome them, and those are the kinds of things that I do. You know, mostly I'm preparing for life cycle events and teaching our students and teaching adults. And that's
in
really
Islam,
most
the
of it.
circumcision is, I mean, some people may not want to agree with this,
Right.
because it's a practice.
Right.
The circumcision is a strong practice called sunnah, recommended that it should be done for the men.
Okay.
But it's not like obligatory or mandatory that if a person is not circumcised, it means he'll go to hell. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we don't have that either, but we just consider it to be, it is an obligation.
Yes.
And it's one that you're not free to abandon. That's right. Yeah,
That's a nice way of putting it.
We don't. Yeah. In fact, the interesting thing is, in my own denomination within Judaism, the Reform movement often takes a very lenient view towards certain practices. This is not one of them. This is, in fact, there was a movement in the 19th century in America where some Reform rabbis thought maybe we should consider eliminating circumcision, and the people rebelled against it, and it was one of the rituals that has never left the Jewish community. That circumcision, in our opinion, goes back to the time of Abraham.
Yes.
And it's mandatory, and every Jewish male must be circumcised.
Interesting. So tell me, as you mentioned reform,
Yes.
could you share with us and the viewers, of course, what are the differences between the Orthodox and the Reform, or whatever the terminology? You know, like you would ask me, what are the different
Sure.
sects in Islam?
Right.
So people basically know of Sunnis and Shiites,
Sure.
etc.
Right.
What
Look,
are those?
The difference, for example, between Sunnis and Shiites goes back, I don't know how far it goes back, but that is a very specific religious distinction between those two groups. Both are Muslims, but I know that's, I believe if I'm correct, it's a different view as to who has the authority to be the imam or the sheikh. One has to, it's like the lineage, and the other one, it's with study, correct? If I
Yes, the
understand.
Shiites are more with lineage.
Lineage, right.
And the Sunnis basically, well, that's how they really started off,
So
the
that-
Shiites. But the Sunnis are basically from a democratic
Right.
point, education, who has the knowledge and the ability to lead, and chosen by the people. That's how it works. It has
Correct.
nothing to do with son or son-in-law or
Right.
whatever.
Okay, so in Judaism, we don't have that kind of distinction in sects the way it is in Islam. It's the distinctions in Islam might be maybe compared to, let's say, the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church, where the Catholic Church has a pope and the Eastern Orthodox Church has the patriarch, and they're both Christians, but they really have different ritual systems and hierarchies based on that division. Okay, they called that the Great Schism. But they're all Christians, but they're different. They're completely different sects of Christianity, and you usually wouldn't find someone who is Eastern Orthodox who would go to a Catholic church without converting, or you wouldn't be Catholic and go to an Eastern Orthodox church without converting. In Judaism,
you know what, Rabbi? I
yes,
love that.
Sure.
And I think we need to get a little more in details with the Orthodox and
Right.
the Reform.
Right.
And you got another
So-
name after that? What's the name?
Yeah, we Orthodox, Reform, Conservative. You know, these distinctions, unlike in Islam, which it goes back hundreds of years, and the difference between Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox, which goes back hundreds of years, the distinctions in Judaism are only the last 100 or 200 years. It's a modern phenomenon. It's divisions based on modern understandings of the world, and I don't think there are significant parallels in other faiths where you have Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. It's basically, first of all, every Jew is a Jew. Okay, so when I go into an Orthodox synagogue, and I've been given an honor at the scriptural reading. When we read from the Torah, they've given me an honor. Because even though they know I'm a Reform rabbi, and they wouldn't necessarily agree with decisions that I make, but they still consider me Jewish, and so I can go in and still have an honor at the Torah.
That is very, very, very interesting, and I think that's a lot of tolerance,
Sure.
which I think other faiths in some areas may not necessarily have that.
Right.
But what is happening, we got to go for a short break.
Okay.
And I really like that topic that we are ending this first segment on. And we're going to have to talk about the beard also. A lot of people don't know about the beard, and they would like to have an idea on seeing a rabbi with a beard. So when we get back, I would like to continue on the note that we ended on the differences with the conservative and Reform, etc. And maybe you share with our viewers, because a lot of people believe only Muslims have beard. They don't have the clue that it has something to do with the founders and the prophets and Abraham and all these things.
Sure.
So viewers, you have been viewing Interfaith Views and Issues, a program designed towards establishing tolerance and better understanding among faiths and cultures. And I'm your host, Shafayat Muhammad, and with me in the studio today, Rabbi Jaffer Kurtz-Lendner, the Rabbi at Temple Solel in Hollywood, South Florida. So we'll be back in a few seconds. Stay tuned. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
Tune in to Who's Who in America and in your community, hosted by Sister Naima Khan Ghani, with extraordinary guests every Sunday night at 8:30 p.m. on www.alhikmatlive.com.
ولا إله إلا الله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر والله أكبر.
Tune in for Friday Khutbah at 1:30 p.m. broadcasting live from Darul Uloom Institute, Pembroke Pines, Florida on Al-Hikmat TV online.
जश्न आमद रसूल अल्लाह ही अल्लाह.
Tune in to Young Muslim Talent in America hosted by Salma Muhammad with talented kids from all over America, every Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. on www.alhikmatlive.com.
Oh, Jashne Amade Rasool. Allahi Allah.
Thinking of doing Sadaqah Jariyah for your near and dear ones? We recommend you to sponsor the Origin of True Islam brochure, the Genealogy of Prophets, or the surahs and zikr to be recited daily as Sadaqah Jariyah for your parents who have passed away. Or you could sponsor one of the items for yourself, fi sabilillah. For more details, contact the Al-Hikmat office at 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158 or email us at alhikmat@alhikmat.com.
Welcome back to Interfaith Views and Issues, a program designed towards establishing tolerance and a better understanding among different faiths and cultures. Again, I'm your host, Shafayat Mohammed, and with me in the studio is Rabbi Jaffer Kurtz-Lendner, the Rabbi of Temple Solel in Hollywood, South Florida. Again, Rabbi, welcome back.
Thank you.
I must say that we ended on a very interesting note. The differences between the different groups or names that you would say conservative or reform.
Sure.
I would like to share some light on that. Plus, I was asking about the beard in Judaism.
Sure.
My reason for saying that, I'll give you one example. I have a lot of Muslims who will tell me that they're not allowed to have a beard because their boss is a Jew and he doesn't want them to have a beard. So the first thing comes to mind is, does it mean only Muslims should have a beard? No, sometimes people will put up those statements, I don't know, but that's why we are here to educate the audience. So I want to share on that. And I want to also share a little point on, you know, I mean, I must tell you, there are extreme Muslims out there. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Right.
You know that. There are radicals out there in the world. We know that. But they're just the minority. And of course, I met a Muslim guy once who, when I was given a lecture right here in South Florida, and I was mentioning how I admire how the Jews and Christians work together and all their, you know, how they build their centers and their synagogues and churches, and it looks so nice, and Muslims are just battling to now get their mosque and their masjids, and you got to beg people for money to do it. One guy came to me after, that's when I newly came to South Florida, and he was like, it's telling me that I need to become back a Muslim, and there's something you read, a kalima, you got to say over la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, what is being read to convert. So he told me I automatically became a kafir, an infidel, by speaking good of Jews and Christians. Could you imagine the extreme stupidity? So we have those kind of characters. I didn't read that. I didn't hear that on Fox News or CNN. I came across it. So what I'm saying, you might also have some extreme radicals, and I would want you to also share to our viewers what an extreme Jew or radical Jew thinks about Muslims.
Okay, so let's
we have a few points on the table.
Sure. Okay, so I'll get into a little bit briefly about denomination. For your Muslim viewers, let's just say the difference between Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox, the equivalent would be if you had different denominations within Islam that took different views towards how to interpret Sharia. We have something called halakha, which the comparison between halakha and the Torah is the similar between Sharia and the Quran.
Okay.
So some people are more strict in their interpretation of halakha, some are more lenient. And so if you had that kind of distinctions within Islam, if you were to have, you know, if it were to exist, your Orthodox Muslims would be very strict in interpreting every law of Sharia. And if you had Reform Muslims, they would still read Sharia and study it and learn the values of the lessons, but they might say that some parts of Sharia it's okay to be more lenient in how we apply it. And if you had conservative, so you have Orthodox and Reform on the two ends. In the middle, conservative would be people who are kind of in the middle. They would be more lenient than the Orthodox, but more strict than the Reform. So it's just so that would be the equivalent. As far as the beard goes, Jews wore beards for thousands of years because the Torah actually has a pronouncement against cutting on your face.
Interesting.
And so the rule became you should never take any kind of a blade against your face for any reason. And so in recent years with new technologies, whether you have chemical approaches towards removing the hair or an electric shaver or something like that, frequently in America the custom is not to have a beard, so many Jews don't have the beards, and Jews who are Orthodox have found ways to be able to follow Jewish law strictly but still not have the beard by using one of these alternate methods. Yet some just wear the beards for traditional purposes. It's not a huge religious issue one way or the other, but I can tell you that if there is anyone who is not permitting Muslims to wear beards at work, it would be for whatever reason their view of their business and how they view their clients, that they view their clients. There are some businesses where people feel that the beard would put off some clients and affect their sales or their business, and if that's the case, that's a cultural determination that they're making and certainly not based on any religious.
But that's a nice point. I think those are some issues that we as community leaders here in America should come around, and I know we have Christian representatives, pastors and priests, etc. And maybe we should get together and educate the communities or these businessmen or people on issues like this, because Jesus had a beard, Moses had a beard, Abraham had a beard, peace be upon him, Muhammad, peace be upon him, had a beard. So maybe we need to educate people and let them know that it is not anything against religion, or it's not just a Muslim thing or an Islamic thing, so that the general public will have a better education.
I think so.
Because I'm telling you, they think it's just a Muslim thing. And if a guy chooses not to have a beard, that's his belief and practice. But people should be educated and not brand people. Or
it's tolerance. People, it's prejudice. People have prejudices. They look at something, they look at someone, the person looks a certain way, and they immediately jump to a conclusion.
But you see, education, a Jewish guy or a Christian guy having prejudice against someone because he has a beard, it is very unethical.
I don't.
And it's ignorance, because Moses and Jesus had beard.
I don't know of Christians or Jews who, there could be, but if they do have that prejudice, it's not because they're Christians or Jews. They're just having prejudice against beards.
It's just it's just a worldly
it's
materialistic.
just it must be an American kind of thing. If you go to the Middle East, you find a lot more beards than you find in America. And it might be a European, Europe, they don't have a lot of beards, but I guess it's probably more cultural based on the, rather than religious. Certainly when I went to Eastern Europe, to Ukraine a few years ago, and that's European and Christian, and there were a lot of beards there. So I guess it's probably more cultural.
Yeah, but as I said, I think we need to educate people more on some of these biblical and Torah and Bible and Quran areas of commonalities where we all have the same faith.
I think we should let people observe their religion the way they want to. If Jewish person wants to wear a yarmulke, they should wear a yarmulke. If a Muslim wants to wear, the women sometimes, what's it called? Is called
hijab.
The hijab. They want to cover, then let them cover up.
Don't you have some beliefs and practices where ladies should
the Orthodox women will cover themselves from, they won't cover their face, but they certainly cover all the way down to their hands. The skirts will go all the way down to their feet, and they'll cover their heads. They keep the hair covered.
So it's like the Muslim dress code,
right?
right?
Right.
Isn't it like a non-dress code?
Yeah,
only the
not
face
quite.
And the wrist open.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, they don't have to. Now, what they can do is, if they want, some women will shave their heads and then wear a wig so that it's not natural hair on their head.
Wow.
And that sometimes they'll do that. But I mean, you know.
So are you telling me the Orthodox are not allowed to show their hair? The woman?
Not in public. A married Orthodox woman is not allowed to show her hair in public. Because she's supposed to preserve her attractiveness just for her husband. So in her home, she can show her hair to her husband. But in public, Orthodox women.
But that's the same concept in Islam.
Exactly, right.
And I'm sure there are millions of people they have no clue.
And,
they think that hijab is just a Muslim thing.
Right. And in some of the more, traditional Christian communities, women will cover up more. I mean, I think we're in a culture where people aren't covering up enough. I think in general, and I think that's one of the cultural things that's happening in America that I'm not a big fan of. Although there's a lot of things in America I am a fan of. The current fashions is not one of them.
I know we find the basketball and football and all the games, but you're right, and that's why I'm saying, Rabbi,
exactly.
I think we need to get together and educate again the hijab.
Yeah.
You have people out there who look at a Muslim woman and think she's oppressed because I get this question all the time. She's oppressed because she has to cover her head, not knowing that Mother Mary, in the Christian point of view, covered her head.
Absolutely.
Orthodox Jews believe that the hair of a woman should not be exposed.
That's right.
It's the same thing in Islam.
That's right.
So people need to know, well, I don't do it because it's my choice, but we should not look at somebody and think, well, it's Muslim.
100%. When I see a Muslim woman dress up that way, I see someone who is being true to her faith and her values and trying to follow the will of God as she understands it and be a holy person and have the values that she wants to represent to her community and that's what I see. I respect that.
But you know what I admire most of that is it has origin in Christianity and Judaism.
Absolutely.
So why should people have prejudice against these
Because
things?
why do people prejudice against anything?
I like that.
That's my view.
So tell me, let's get this very controversial question out.
Okay.
So just as you have radical Muslims.
So let me talk a little bit about this. We'll get a little bit of controversial.
Yes.
Raised in the Jewish community, it's part of our history to believe that what we call the land of Israel is where we are supposed to be living. We're supposed to have that as a homeland. So the political movement came about in the late 19th century to establish a Jewish homeland at the time it was called nationally as Palestine. Much bigger area than, it also included
where were you born, Rabbi?
I was born in Buffalo.
Okay, because a lot of times I know some rabbi, somebody born in Israel.
No, but my father was born in Vienna, and he experienced the Holocaust. His father was killed, and yet, one of the things is here's a man who could hate the world from the way the world treated him, and he definitely was supportive of Israel, but, he said the problem between Israel and the Palestinians is what he used to tell me. Because it's not that one side is right and one side is wrong. He said the problem is you have two right forces. Both sides are right. And here's a man who went through the Holocaust who could easily become anti-everything except Jewish. And so my earliest beliefs about Israel, although I definitely have a passion of supporting the concept of a Jewish homeland in Israel, but I also very much appreciate Palestinians and the culture, their culture, and what they have to contribute. I know a few years ago I met someone in an organization where it brought Jews and Muslims together, especially the children, to learn each other in Israel. And there was a rabbi who was in charge, and then there was a Palestinian who was from a refugee camp in Gaza. Now, if you want to think of, if there's somewhere where someone should be filled with hostility, a refugee camp in Gaza would be the place, right? And he came out, he said, I don't want to fight. He goes, I am so proud of my Palestinian heritage, But because I'm so proud of my Palestinian heritage, I understand their pride of their Jewish and Israeli heritage. He goes, and what we have to do, if we don't want to kill each other, because we could just keep doing that forever. We could just keep killing each other and killing each other's people and killing each other's children, or we could bring the children together to learn to find a solution. And that's, that's my own view. I think you have millions of people living in this land, and my personal view is that there's got to be a solution. Look, will everybody have everything they want? No, but then again, I'm married. So in my house, everybody doesn't get everything they want.
Of course.
But that's what life is. So I think there could be a solution where Palestinians could be proud of their own heritage and their own nationalism, and God willing, one day there's going to be a state there, but they could be living side by side with Israel, and the Israelis could be proud of being Israeli, and the Palestinians could be proud of being Palestinian. We could, now maybe it's a dream. Maybe this will never happen. But it's my dream. It's my dream to see that happen. As far as the radicals, I think we all have the same feeling towards radicals. Whether they're Muslim radicals or Jewish radicals or Christian radicals, the people who preach hate, the people who preach violence, I mean, I have no respect for any of them on any side. I have absolutely no respect for Muslim radicals. I have absolutely no respect for Jewish radicals. There are Jews in Israel who have taken upon, they have these things they call price tag is the new thing. I don't know what the whole thing is, but they're attacking, there's right-wing Jews who are attacking mosques and burning down mosques, and attacking liberal Jews also in Israel. And this is disgusting. And the good thing is, one of the deputy prime minister in Israel, not Netanyahu, but his deputy, guy's name is Mofaz, he came out and called that terrorism. And I was delighted to hear the deputy prime minister of Israel say that burning down a mosque is terrorism, because it is. And there's no sugarcoating it, and there's no justifying it, and it's not acceptable.
No, that's interesting.
There was a time a year or two ago where some teenagers burned the Qurans in a mosque in the West Bank. Mm-hmm. So this was in, some Israeli rabbis who live in the West Bank. So I'm not going to call them liberal because they're living in the West Bank. They purchased themselves some brand new Qurans that they paid for, and they presented it to the imam of that mosque, and saying, it's absolutely despicable for one religion to attack the holy book of another. So they bought brand new ones, the full, not the kind of paperback ones that but I mean the real Quran that's a good quality, that's appropriate to read from scripturally, and this rabbi presented them to, and I kept that story.
That is really
There's a story of a couple of years ago, and I'll tell you this story too. In Hebron. Hebron is the place where there's probably more hostility between Jews and Muslims within this land, Israel, Palestine, more than anywhere else, right? But a few years ago, a little Israeli girl wandered out of her settlement. Now, the Palestinians in Hebron have a great deal of hostility towards the Jews because they feel that the Jews are trying to take away their land. Mm-hmm. And the Jews are hostile towards the Palestinians because they think they have a right to the whole land. Okay, so this is real hostile there, okay? So this little 3-year-old Israeli girl wanders out. It didn't end in tragedy. You know what happened? She was found by a Palestinian family. The Palestinian family returned her to the Palestinian police. The Palestinian police called the Israeli security, whatever the security, the defense. So here you have Palestinian police calling the Israeli army saying, we have a little girl we want to return to, and she was returned safely.
Wow.
So you have Jews helping Palestinians,
yes.
Palestinians helping Jews. A few months, there's a lot of talk today about, is there going to be a war between Israel and Iran? Well, a couple of months ago, an Israeli family created a website that talked about how much they love the Iranian people. Okay, we don't want war with Iran. We love the Iranian people. And then some Iranian people put up a website that said, and we love Israelis. We don't want war with Israel. This is people to people.
Yes.
They don't want to fight. They don't want a war. They just want peace and security and the rights for everybody. And
so you think it's just a total political thing?
I think it's politics.
People of ego.
I think that's what it is.
Well, to conclude, I mean, time is running out on us right now. But I try to tell even Muslims who have this anti-Jewish
Right.
perspective that they should, I mean, like how you
Right.
have some Jews
Right.
who don't want to hear what Palestine and
Absolute-
do not accept that Palestinians and Palestine exist.
Correct.
You also got some Muslims who do not want to hear about Jews
Exactly.
and Israel should ever exist.
Right.
But I tell them, I said, you're a Muslim, check your Quran.
Right.
We see in the Quran that Moses was commanded by God, Moses, peace be upon him,
Right.
to bring the Israelites out, and God opened the ocean. And I tell everybody that. It was God who opened the ocean. In the Quran, we say Allah. And
Right.
God who authorized the Israelites and Moses to come over to the Holy Land. And that territory that we have called Israel and Palestine today. And we also know that Jews and Christians come from Abraham. When I
Right.
mean Jews and Christians come from Abraham,
Correct.
their family background and their
Right.
lineage come from Abraham. So they're cousins.
Right.
They're blood ties.
Right.
They're relatives.
Right.
And whatever may be their practice, they belong to that land. That land
right.
belonged to their forefathers. And they should start learning to live together.
That's right. And
It's
I-
just politicians who create a
And
problem.
I don't blame one side or the other. I don't say it's the fault of the Israeli leadership. I don't say it's the fault of the Palestinian leadership. I'm saying it's a two-sided conflict, and they both, I can see intransience on both sides. I can see stubbornness on both sides.
both sides.
And they, if they wanted to make it happen, they could make it happen. If they wanted, if the political leaders wanted to say this is what we have to do for the sake of our people, then they could do it.
Because that is how it was before.
That's
It
right.
was
That's right.
Jacob's sons,
Right.
Joseph and his brothers,
right.
they had problems.
Right. They
but
made up.
They lived together and they made up.
And they made up.
And that is why
Jacob and Esau
Yes.
made up.
Jacob and Esau.
That's
and
right.
That's why the Bible and the Torah
right.
and the Quran and the
That's
Psalms
right.
tell us of these
That's right.
stories. So our people should make up, because the Quran believes in
Right.
Jacob and Joseph
Right.
and Esau and everybody and
Right.
Isaac and Ishmael.
Ishmael, right, that's right.
And I think it takes the religious leaders to make
Yeah.
a move.
Yes.
And we may have peace in the Middle East
Yes.
and peace all over the world.
Yeah, that's our dream.
That's our dream.
That's our
but
dream.
maybe we have to try to
Okay.
work towards it happening. But Rabbi, it's really
Thank
a
you.
pleasure to have someone like you in the studio. I mean, we have gone a long way back,
Yes.
and I think your comments and your presence here and the whole entire Muslim world and non-Muslim world looking at us on Al-Hikmat TV really will help educate people and remove, that sort of hatred and misunderstanding.
Right.
And we can help create some more tolerance and better understanding. So you got a couple of seconds to say last few words before
Thank
we close
you.
off.
Well, I just want to also extend the same courtesy to you, since I've arrived here in South Florida and I've gotten to know you, and I think, again, religious leaders from all sides, if they could take your lead, if Muslim leaders could take your lead, and if Jewish leaders could take the lead of speaking about peace instead of hostility, and we come together and build friendships with each other, then I think, we can recognize that ultimately we're all God's children. God created all of us, and God didn't create us to fight and kill each other. God created us to live in peace and to love each other and to love God.
And I want to again conclude by letting the world know that I like the idea of you as a rabbi having your daughter be taken care by a Muslim physician. Your swimming pool is being taken care by a Muslim. You see, a lot of people in the world outside, they do not believe that these things happen in America. They think that Muslims and Jews are all about fighting. And you guys and we all live together and have a good relationship.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And viewers, you have been viewing Interfaith Views and Issues, a program designed towards establishing tolerance and better understanding among different faiths and cultures. And I'm your host, Shafayat Muhammad, and with me in the studio today, we had Rabbi Jaffer Kurtz-Lendner. Do I have that name properly?
You do, good.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure, and we thank the Rabbi for being with us, and stay tuned to many more programs coming up here on Al-Hikmat TV on Interfaith Views and Issues. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.